week, and then the B team follows. Ooh, that was low. That was low. But anyway, we've got a very special program this morning. We've got Philip Singleton. He's a candidate for U.S. Congress, 3rd District. You can join us on Facebook Live at News Talk 1330 or at WLBB Facebook page. We can also call us. Yes, it's a revolutionary new device called the telephone, 678-601-8255, 678-601-TALK. You can also find us on the TuneIn app, and of course we're on 1330 and 106.3. Let's start out. If you go to Philip's website, philipsingleton.com, he has a little short intro video, and we're going to see if we can get this to work, and we'll start off with it.
I remember watching the attacks on 9/11 and seeing the F-16s flying outside my college apartment window. I knew then that we were under attack and my generation would be called to respond. 9 days later, I answered that call and joined the United States Army. Since then, I've spent 7 of the last 15 years serving overseas. I've patrolled the DMZ in South Korea, I've trained NATO and Allied forces across Europe, and I've led soldiers on 3 combat tours to both Iraq and Afghanistan. I've had the honor of serving with the greatest band of brothers, dedicated warriors, and servant leaders, spending most of my career in the storied 101st Airborne Division. We swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States from all enemies, both foreign and domestic. My name is Philip Singleton, and I'm running for Congress in Georgia's 3rd District. Join me as we unite our country and we achieve something absolutely remarkable. Help me to put the power back in the right hands. Yours.
A little bit further on the intro, Philip is a native Georgian who married his high school sweetheart. You may see her on camera, the former Julie Ruth Young of Sonoa. They met at a youth group while attending Grace Evangelical Church in Fayetteville. They have 4 beautiful children, very beautiful children. Timothy, 14, Denver, 10, Tyler, 9, and Emma, 7. And as he said in the video, he was originally pursuing a pre-med degree at Georgia State University. He joined the Army 9 days after September 11th to answer the nation's call and defend freedom. Well, first of all, Philip, on behalf of our audience, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And welcome. That's a brief intro, and throughout the program, we're going to do a little bit more talking about your military career. You rose to the rank of major, and you've been flying around in helicopters for a number of years in several different countries. And flying a helicopter, I understand, it's not the easiest thing in the world. Somebody told me it was like balancing on a beach ball.
Yeah, they don't like flying most of the time.
Tell us what inspired you after 9/11 to join the Army.
Actually, it was President Bush's speech there, standing on the in the World Trade Center on the crumbled masses of the World Trade Center, and
with the bullhorn.
Yeah, exactly. And he just said, "Hey, we're under attack, and we need people to answer the call." And I was raised by my parents and in our church to believe in service, and I was young and willing and able, and so felt like it was the obligation of my generation to answer that call. And so I did. I answered the call, and intended on just doing one tour, and one tour led to 2 tours, led to 3 tours, and then 15 years later, and we decided that it's time to come serve somewhere else, and so that's what we're doing. We're just continuing our service.
It says in your bio you spent 13 years as an active duty flying officer of the AH-64D Longbow, which is known as the Apache.
That's right.
That's correct. And that was the one, and was that the one in Black Hawk Down?
No, there were no Apaches in Black Hawk Down. That was 160th Special Operations, but Apaches were the first thing to cross the berm in the Gulf War. It's the most lethal combat attack helicopter in the Army, so it was an honor to.
That's that 2-seater. It's kind of
That's right.
The thin one that.
That's right. It's got the big dome on top. Normally, it's the most.
What is that
armed
dome?
It's a radar.
Is it? And it's got the big blade, so it has that swoosh.
It does, yeah. It's a pretty nice helicopter.
So you deployed to combat for 1 tour in Iraq, 2 tours in Afghanistan with the storied 101st Airborne Division. It was awarded 2 Bronze Star medals and 5 Air Medals for his combat actions. Led troops at every level of his career, was consistently rated ahead of his peers, and rapidly progressed to rank of major. There he was selected to attend the Intelligence Officer Advanced Corps and the Command and General Staff College, and certified both as a strategic and joint planner. Well, this military bio, it goes on and on, so we're going to take little bits and pieces of it as we go on. So why would anyone with this kind of background want to be a member of the United States Congress?
Well, it's a want's probably not the right word. It's more of a desire to serve. But we have fewer active duty. Let me rephrase. We have fewer combat veterans serving in our Congress now than any time in our history. And Congress is the branch of government that's supposed to really control whether we go to war and the method at which we employ our military internationally. Right. And so it's gotten away from that, and you see a lot of executive authority being used in that, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later because of recent tweets and comments. But, if you have such a huge disconnect between the fighting force and the men and women doing that, and Congress is not doing their job, we have to have representation. Because nobody, unless you've gone through and understand the full cost of war, and it's not just a dollars and cents thing. It's men and women who serve and sacrifice, and then if you don't understand that full cost, it's hard to make an educated decision on when to use force.
When we talk about the World War II generation, we often see veterans, and they just don't want to talk about it. There are aspects of war that are so horrific that you just really don't talk about them. Is that right?
Yeah, we don't. It's the unspoken aspects of war and the way you disconnect from your family, and we've seen it through people we've served and in our own lives. I mean, there's the Army does a great job, the military does a great job of preparing you to go fight and win your wars, but the psychological aspects and the things you have to do and see every day, we don't do a very good job of preparing people for that.
Our guest this morning is Philip Singleton. He's a candidate for United States Congress, 3rd Congressional District. Stay tuned. I've got some trick questions. I got some hard questions, and I probably will go into a rant. But first, this word from Tanner Health System.
At Tanner, we're advancing health throughout West Georgia and East Alabama. Because we know that exceptional care isn't based on how many patients we serve, but how well we serve them. That's why we're focused on quality, delivering the best possible care for our patients. It's why we're expanding our clinical services and building new facilities to serve our growing community. And it's why we're looking beyond our hospitals and medical practices to develop sustainable wellness and preventive health programs in our region. What makes a hospital great has changed. It's not how many beds we have. It's how well we care for the neighbors who need them. Delivering the right care to every patient, every time, is how Tanner is advancing health with medicine beyond measure. Learn more at tanner.org or find a physician on our medical staff by calling 770-214-CARE.
Good morning. Welcome back to the Community Voice. I'm Steve Gradick, your host. Delighted to have you with us. As we said, we're going to give little bits and pieces of the bio of Philip Singleton as we go along. In addition to his military training, Philip has obtained 2 master's degrees and a top secret clearance as a Master's of Aeronautical Science from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona, and a Master's of International Relations from Webster University. Where's that?
It's in Kansas.
He graduated both programs with honors. Phillips has spent 7 of the last 13 years serving overseas, and his family has lived in several states across the U.S., as well as Germany and South Korea. Over the weekend, President Trump was reported to have said that, we want to get out of Syria soon, the troops out of Syria. I think there's about 25 or 100 or so troops in Syria currently. Good idea, bad idea?
That's a good idea.
Why?
Well, it's a very complex adaptive system, but the United States we need to shift the way we look at our foreign policy. So international relations, there's diplomatic, information, military, and economic are kind of the 4 methods that we do international relations. And we in the United States, we use the big M We seem to use military for everything. There's more employees at the Pentagon than there are entire diplomats in the entire State Department globally. And so you look at that, and we have got to get away from the policy of assisted self-determination. That's really what we do.
Wouldn't you be concerned that Russia would take over Syria if we leave?
Sure, that's a concern. I mean, it's a very complex system. So the problem is we think we know what the cause and effect's going to be, but we really have no idea what the long-term effect's going to be. But we have got to start shifting. We have to start shifting the way that we view our military, the way we use them internationally. And that can't be the first lever that's pulled. Our military needs to be more of a last lever, and we need to use some of the other. We don't hardly ever use our economic, and President Trump's doing it for the first time, I think, since I've been really paying attention to politics of the last 20 years, is finally using economics as a lever internationally, and we've got to do that more, and that's got to be our first go-to.
You referenced during in the first segment about non-declared wars, and in that, before we go to war, Congress is supposed to issue a declaration of war, but we haven't done that in quite a while.
No, I mean that's one of the things that I talked to my opponent about the first time I met with him is, so I have an issue with, I think it's 7 times now that we've had the executive branch use the War Powers Act since 2001 to invade a sovereign country outside of really the purview of the War Powers Act. Well, that's going to happen forever until Congress stands up and holds POTUS accountable. And it doesn't matter which one. I mean, President Obama did it. President Trump's done it. President Bush did it. It's really just a matter of saying you need at least a congressman or woman to stand up and say, wait a second, that's my authority, not yours, and we haven't voted on it. It's a hard system. I mean, we got to fix it.
Well, that kind of leads me to my favorite question. This is my favorite question I like to ask of congressmen and candidates for Congress. All spending bills in Congress originate in the House, per the Constitution. And therefore, in my humble opinion, the U.S. House of Representatives could really restrain, if not cut back enormously, the size and the scope of overreaching federal bureaucracy by simply cutting off the dollars. But they don't seem to want to do that. Would you agree the power of the purse falls in the lap of the U.S. House?
Yeah, absolutely. And a balanced budget's my number one issue. So I talk about that a lot. No one seemed to care that I was talking about a balanced budget right until this omnibus bill just passed, and all of a sudden it was like, I was talking about that already, because in 2011, Admiral Mike Mullen said that the greatest threat to our national security is our debt. 2011. Mm-hmm. We've added over $7 trillion of debt since he said that. Mm-hmm. People don't understand that this is not just about the strength of our economy. This is about the security of our nation. We have got to get out of debt, and we've got to get out of allowing all these foreign entities to hold so much of our debt. China right now, there's some estimates I've read that's up to 14 trillion. I think it's closer to 8, but you're very limited. Again, they're using the economic element of national power extremely well, and we are not. And that's a bad deal.
Well, but again, back to my question, we may not need the Convention of States. We just need the U.S. House to quit spending all this money.
Yeah, well, it's individuals. So I blame the House. That's why I'm running for Congress. I mean, there's lots of things you can get involved. But to me, the majority of our issues right now with the legislative process in the United States falls on Congress's shoulders. And that's why I support a balanced budget amendment. I've been very vocal about that. I think if you can't pass a balanced budget that's tied to GDP, I think the top third of the House and Senate should be ineligible to run again.
It's kind of appropriate in talking about undeclared wars to mention Rand Paul. But Rand Paul likes to say that Republicans are conservatives when they're out of power. And then when they get into power, they're more like Democrats. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Why?
I think the party system, you see in the last 15 years a shift in the power of the national parties. It used to be that the party system kind of supported the candidates and was just a place for like-minded people. But right now we've got this media war going on and it's these two giant ideological bases that are constantly trying to tell the American people that, hey, the other side's either immoral, right, unethical, unintelligent or unpatriotic. So they got this battle back and forth, and the parties just want to remain in power. So the way they do that is it's all through the way that they utilize money, and they use PAC money and corporate money, and they use that money to keep themselves in power. And so the two-party system, at the local level, I've seen a much different parties. But once you start getting to the national level, it's a shame that when you have congressmen that run on one thing. They talk about running on a balanced budget, running on restricted use of military force and individual liberty, and then they get to D.C. and then they vote in line exactly with the party leadership on stuff that completely is against their platform.
So would you say that's because of human nature, the power and the influence and prestige tends to intoxicate them to the point that they lose contact with the electorate?
I think that's probably the book answer, but I think that's a little bit of a cop-out. I think it has more to do with people in power tend to want to stay in power, and there's our congressmen and women. They don't feel threatened. Mm-hmm. Once they get elected, that's why we had 7 people running last time, mm-hmm. right? For the seat I'm running for. Yeah. And now it's just me. I'm standing alone against the current member.
And I guess a lot of people say you don't have a chance.
Of course they do.
And how do you respond to them?
Oh, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I understand the conventional wisdom, and I've heard that time and time again by my refusing to take PAC money. Like, well, you can't win without money.
Are you crazy? You can't take PAC money?
Right.
You're crazy. You're nuts.
I still live in America where service matters and character matters, and last time I checked, money still can't vote. It's still people that vote, right? And so that's all we have to do to start changing the way politics works in Washington is, when a guy like me that wants to serve, that's already committed to, I've already signed my resignation, right? I don't want to go be a career politician. I want to go serve for a very short period of time and then come home and let someone else serve. The people can elect me. It's going to take 25,000 votes to beat Drew Ferguson in the primary. And when I do that, spending $15,000 and taking no PAC money, people are going to notice. And that's going to be a huge win for the entire country. And then other people, it's my hope, that other people will be inspired by that, and that we see a lot more people like me that come out there and say, hey, I'm willing to serve for a few years, and then come home, and we can get money out of politics and get it back in the people's hands. That's my goal.
Well, you speak of character matters. What did you think about when we heard the news stories about a slush fund in Congress to pay off people who contend there was sexual harassment on part of the Congress members?
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Did we ever find out how much that was? Wasn't
No.
it several million?
I don't think anybody knows. It's all just speculation. But the corruption is so rampant. And you look at we the people have to beat this corruption. So people talk about a convention of states. And on principle, I understand the concept, and I don't oppose a convention of states on principle. I'm worried a little bit of a runaway convention, but if you can do a convention of states, then you can't sit there and tell me that you can't get your congressman or woman that is doing these immoral things out of office. Every 2 years, they're reelected, right? That they got like a 15% approval rating and something like a 98% reelection rate. That's just because the people need to wake up and realize that they are the ones hiring these people, and when they're not doing their job, they should fire them. It's really that simple.
But that would require an informed electorate.
Yeah, or more informed. People are so. Our voting statistics are awful. They're horrible. And I was talking about it's going to take 25,000 votes to beat Drew Ferguson. That's out of 850,000, right? So you don't really have to have that large a percent of the population to just kind of pay attention and get out there and vote. And so that's what I would tell your listeners is they need to take heart, because their vote literally matters. This is not a philosophical, hey, your vote matters, get out there and be engaged. No, it really, really does. It really matters.
Our guest this morning is Philip Singleton. He's a candidate for 3rd District Congressional seat for the West Georgia area. I believe it includes Carrollton, Griffin, Thomaston, LaGrange.
Yeah, it's like 13 counties.
It's like everywhere.
Big,
yeah, okay. We'll be back with more of Philip after this word from Tanner Health System.
At Tanner, we're advancing health throughout West Georgia and East Alabama, because we know that exceptional care isn't based on how many patients we serve, but how well we serve them. That's why we're focused on quality, delivering the best possible care for our patients. It's why we're expanding our clinical services and building new facilities to serve our growing community. And it's why we're looking beyond our hospitals and medical practices to develop sustainable wellness and preventive health programs in our region. What makes a hospital great has changed. It's not how many beds we have. It's how well we care for the neighbors who need them. Delivering the right care to every patient, every time, is how Tanner is advancing health with medicine beyond measure. Learn more at tanner.org or find a physician on our medical staff by calling 770-214-CARE.
All right, here we go. Back on the Community Voice, as I said, we're going to do a little bit of bio here, there, and yon with Philip's military service. Let's see. Philip returned to the 101st Airborne Division and deployed to Salerno, Afghanistan, to serve as a battalion intelligence officer. Still flying the Apache, he was so successful in predicting and defeating the Taliban's indirect fire and improvised explosive device teams. He was sent to DARPA upon returning from combat to assist in the implementation of his methods in future Army battlefield systems. Upon return from Afghanistan, he completed his master's degree in aeronautics and was selected to command the elite helicopter company known as Killer Spades Alpha Company 3-101st Aviation Regiment. It's most well known for Operation Anaconda in 2002. He also served in South Korea along the DMZ. Tell us your thoughts about the current state of affairs with North Korea.
I'm excited to see what happens with the talks. And I think that there's finally some progress being made. You know, we talk about a lot of international relations. We've got to talk with a lot of extremely smart people, and most of us that are studied up on it and that have looked at international policy realize that KJU is not an irrational actor. His actions are very rational, but he likes to play up the irrational actor because it gives him a little bit more purview to kind of execute his strategy. So I'm very encouraged that there's talks going on, and I'm more encouraged that China's getting involved. It's not a zero-sum game, right? We like to say, or the news likes to tell us and kind of play the fear aspect because it sells pretty well, but the concept of China being involved doesn't automatically mean that it's worse for America. It can be beneficial for us to have a Southeast Asian influence in the discussions.
So you spent 2 years in Korea.
I did.
So you're kind of sorry. MacArthur, I think, wanted to go and take over North Korea, but that didn't happen.
Yeah, it's too complicated, you know, to come up with a. I just left Korea last summer, so I mean I was there very recently.
Really?
And
how are the Korean people living under this overshadowing? I think you referred to them as KJU.
KJU. We get very little out of North Korea. We get a lot of intelligence through SIGINT and other MINT, but we get very little HUMINT, which is human intelligence, because they do a very good job of blocking out the state. But
it's really a very primitive country, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, militarily they're pretty well off as far as numerically.
Right.
As far as the state of their equipment, it's lacking. But they've been pouring pretty much everything they had into their nuclear weapons program. Now the South Korean people are unbelievable. They are tight-knit, family, low crime, some of the kindest people I've ever met. And a lot of them still have family. I mean, they have very long ancestral memories. So there's a lot in South Korea that I think would be very excited about the prospects of reunification with the North.
Back to Congress. And I understand you're pro-life.
I am, yeah.
But the United States Congress, in its great wisdom, seems fit to continue to fund at the tune of $500 million per year Planned Parenthood, which sells aborted baby parts for a few extra $100 here and there, which is in violation of federal law. Would you support defunding Planned Parenthood?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a no-brainer. I mean, to be fair, they funded everything with this omnibus bill. You know, even the stuff that the Trump administration put out in their budget for decreases we saw massive increases. So it was an across-the-board increase to all funding. But, I wanted to talk about the pro-life thing because it goes back to what I'm saying about people need to get involved in electing their representatives. You have the first time we have Republican House, Republican Senate, Republican President, and most of the House, in fact, I cannot think of a single person right now of the Republicans in the House that's pro-choice. Now, you typically have a few that are pro-choice, but they're all pro-life right now. And there's no legislation at all that's addressing abortion. And so you think, well, how can that be? Well, if they solve a problem that takes away their ability to run on the problem, they can't come back and look you in the face. And it drives me crazy.
Don't tell anybody that.
That's not how.
That's a secret.
Look, in the military, you wouldn't get away with that. I mean, that's absolutely ludicrous. Which is why, when I'm on the campaign trail, I tell people, hey, everything I talk about, I'm going to have a bill, or I'm going to be working on a bill. But more importantly, I'm going to put it on my website. Hey, here's the issue I'm addressing. Here's how I'm addressing it. And when I face a hurdle like, hey, I can't get it before committee, I'm going to tell everyone, hey, here's the bill. Here's where it's at committee. Here's by name who's holding this bill up. And here's what I'm doing to work towards it, right? I don't expect my congressmen to be miracle workers.
Sure.
I really don't. But I expect them to be workers.
Right.
And if they're not doing their job, and if I don't do my job, it's my expectation that I get fired and let someone else go do it.
Why should, I know this may sound bizarre to you, but it's a serious question. Why should anybody care that we preserve the First and Second Amendments to the Constitution?
I mean, the Bill of Rights we wouldn't have the Constitution without those first 10 amendments. I mean, you had, the two groups of people that were fighting back and forth, all patriots, they were significantly concerned about the overreach of federal authority. I mean, that was a fair. You look at, they were fighting England at the time. They had a legitimate reason to be concerned about the overreach of a central government. But all of those rights we have to protect. I mean, that's what makes America different.
A lot of people want to give them up.
Well, they do now, because it feels like a short-term win and it's very short-sighted. But luckily, our Constitution is very, very, very hard to change, and there's a reason for that, and it's because you can't sway with public opinion. When you have a tragedy like we had down in Florida, I mean, people are just like, at some point, you have enough is enough. However, that's why we have those rights, because we have to be careful that we don't trample on our rights. Freedom of speech is another big one. I mean, if you think that your Second Amendment rights are under assault right now, you're not paying attention if you don't realize that your First Amendment rights are under assault right now. I mean, it's hard for a conservative to get on a college campus and talk. And we're not even talking about some of the guys that are really antagonistic. We're talking about guys that just have a conservative viewpoint, and that should be scary to everybody. We have to have dialogue. And those of us that are in the conservative realm, we got to be careful that we don't limit the speech of those that are in opposition to us, and on the liberal side too. Because if you don't have that back and forth conversation, that dialogue, it's like iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. It's the same thing when it comes to politics.
Okay, we're going to run out of time, and so I'm going to give you 60 seconds to give us your elevator speech. Why should someone vote for Philip Singleton?
You should vote for me because I'm going to go to D.C. for a short period of time. I believe in term limits. I'm going to do exactly what I say. As an Army officer, it's important to me to hold fast to my word. I'm not going to be swayed by big money or party politics. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to let you be informed the whole time. Also, when your current congressman is rated consistently in the bottom 20% of active congressmen, if Matt Ryan was a bottom 20% quarterback, I don't think we'd keep him here in the Falcons. We'd fire him and find somebody new. Your congressman is no different. They're public servants, and they need to stay public servants. So I think you need to vote for me and support me and get involved and help me go take our country back for us. And then I'll support the next guy after me or gal, and we'll keep the trend going.
Our guest this morning has been Philip Singleton. His website is philipsingleton.com. That's Philip, Singleton, Singleton.com. Thank you for listening to the Community Voice. This video will be on our station's Facebook page. You're in tune to WLBB Carrollton.